Okay, I think that we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live panel here at RWA Week. I'm your usual host, Polly, strategic advisor, and I'm really happy to be your host for this discussion. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest questions in Web3: how blockchain, AI, digital identity, virtual economies are coming together to shape the future of the internet. And it sounds like science fiction sometimes, but many of these technologies are already moving into real businesses and finance and everyday life. And to help us separate the hype from reality, we have two fantastic guests, two frenemies with us today. Please welcome Alex Davis, founder and CEO of Maverick, and Martin Halford, CEO and CTO at Polymath. Both of them have years of experience building blockchain infrastructure. So I'm looking forward to hearing not only the big ideas, but also the practical lessons from the front lines. Dear speakers, feel free to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of a background, how you started being curious about Web3, how you entered this new blockchain era. Maybe there were some failures. Maybe there are some achievements that you would love to share. Martin, feel free to go first.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Paulie. Yeah, so I'm Martin Halford. I'm from Polymath, and we're the team behind Polymesh. We've been at this game for a long time. Polymath actually led the sort of charge in terms of security tokens, what we now call RWAs, back in the day with the ERC 1400 standards. And everything we learned about RWAs back then and how they struggle on general purpose chains is what we poured into Polymesh. So we built a layer one where identity, compliance, and settlement live on the protocol layer itself, not bolted on in some smart contract. And lately, we've been deep into zero knowledge work. We think that privacy is the elephant in the room when it comes to blockchains. And so we've been doing some great stuff with ZK proofs and our confidential assets. And we're now looking at post-quantum and how we can actually use store data in a post-quantum era where things get scarily easy to decrypt. So looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin. Well, post quantum is something interesting. I think that it can be a separate topic to discuss. Because I need to make the deeper research on that. But I think that your journey is a great reminder that the industry didn't wake up one morning and suddenly discover RWAs. The team behind Pomesh has been working to recognize securities long before the term real world assets became the latest buzzword. And I remember that on one of the uh, previous Twitter spaces, Alex said that we called songs MP3s. Now we're calling RWAs. So it's just a matter of phrasing. Maybe in 10 days, there will be not RWAs themselves, but just assets on chain. Alex, feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of Maverick Dynamics, the company building the Maverick blockchain, the equities tech stack for RWA tokenization on top of it, and Maven Finance, which is the lending arm for the RWA ecosystem. With that being said, I'm the former chief innovation officer for the Tezos Blockchain's MENA office. And, Tezos is one of the early blockchains in RWA tokenization with the Aspen Resort in Colorado. And we decided, we came with the idea that effectively, I share, Martin, actually, I think you and I share on this, then, general purpose chains, I would say lack direction and focus when it comes to embracing an RWA ecosystem. It's not just from a chain layer. Although it's from, in our opinion, it's from a leadership layer behind the chain. I think we're seeing chains fail for that. And so because of that, we designed Maverick as our thesis is that blockchains are like parallels to nation states and their economies. And so we've designed Maverick specifically around that whole element. We can dive into it. I'm writing a thesis on it. So, but then we also built, as part of being a niche application layer, the equities tech stack, which is powering the multi-bank. Multi-bank is a CFD trading platform. They do $35 billion a day in trading volume. They have a centralized exchange called MBIO, and all of their tokenization is powered by equities. and all of that goes onto the Maverick chain. And we're also launching Equities as a standalone tokenization platform as well. Everything gets integrated into Maven Finance, so you basically get one hub to go, buy the different RWAs, whether they come from MBIO or whether they come from Equities, and then you can get an instant loan against them as well. So for us, it's about building an ecosystem and not just the base layer.
Awesome. Well, always happy to know some more details every time regarding the introduction, Alex. And really like the perspective, because I think it challenges one of the biggest assumptions in blockchain. For years, many people believed that one general purpose chain could solve every problem, but real world assets have very different needs. And Maverick was built with that in mind, creating infrastructure design specifically for RWAs instead of trying to feed them into a system built for everything else. Here, you with Martin sharing the same idea, but the execution is different. I think, but you can say other things as well. Happy that you're continuing working with Multibank as well. No MBIO very well, and the team behind that. Hi, Travis, if you can hear or see us.
I think they have a podcast right now, or starting at the end of ours, actually.
I will reshare it with him anyway, so he will be with I think as well. Awesome. I think that we're done with the introductions round, and we can start discussing the questions. So I hate simple questions, and we can start right away with hard ones. How do we actually build layer-1 networks capable of hosting complex multi-layer data ecosystems like AI engines, metaverses simultaneously, and the RWAs? Exactly. Martin, feel free to go first.
Well, I might be a little bit controversial here, and I say I don't think they should, right? I mean, what is a blockchain? A blockchain is essentially a slow, clunky database that can't be hacked. That's it. It's very, very good at storing data and keeping it tamper-proof and immutable, and they're terrible GPUs. So I don't think that they should be hosting them. How I would split it would be that we have the things on-chain that matter, identity, ownership, rights, proof, and all the other heavy stuff is done off-chain. The compute, the modeling, the spatial data, that kind of stuff. So the glue between these two is the cryptography, and we use zero-knowledge proofs for that. So you use the chains to hold the proofs and to be able to ensure that the people who are the people they say they are really are who they say they are. Is that English? You don't dump all the data on it, right? It just doesn't work that way. And that's for us what we think is going. So for us, it's making sure that what's on chain is provable and honest and true, and you do everything else off chain. Otherwise, you can't squeeze all that data into these blocks. We've had a lot of work. We've done a lot of work with our ZK proof stuff, and one of the hardest parts was to make them efficient and concise enough to actually work on chains. And so I can't see myself putting a metaverse onto a chain anytime soon.
Okay. I really like that answer because it pushes back against the idea that every problem belongs on one blockchain, and sometimes the best solution is knowing what not to put on chain. AI models, metaverse worlds, RWAs, other heavy applications generate massive amounts of data, right? And trying to store all of that on one blockchain, I think would be incredibly expensive, at least. Instead, cryptography becomes the real hero here, and the chain doesn't need to hold every piece of information. It needs to hold proofs that the data is real and unchanged and trustworthy. And I think that approach also makes the system much more scalable in a way, which matters when global data creation is expected to reach hundreds of zettabytes every year. Alex, what do you think?
I think it's going to be a boring panel if I agree with Martin. Usually, I have things to disagree with my with my panelists.
I saw you clap, so
Yeah, I think more so I can add to what Martin was saying. Blockchains are not databases. Blockchains are distributed ledgers. And so they're there for tracking provenance and changes of ownership, not for storing data like your conversation history in Claude or photos or anything really, right? It's not Dropbox. So when it comes to what blockchains really are they're basically a cloud computer for applications that track the changes of ownership of something in that application, right? Or that track the state, the change of the state of something in the application. All the rest of the data should live off chain. I'm not actually, you know, in the back in the Tesla's early days, there was Spruce ID and everything they were doing, and decentralized ID, and everyone was about to crack it, and it just never took off. I don't think people are easy to comprehend it or understand it. I think also something that needs to be taken into account is that IDs are inherently centralized things, right? They are run by a government. Like we live in Dubai. I grew up in Los Angeles. Your ID and your, let's call it your citizenship number or residency number, is kind of tied to everything you do in the UAE. And so those things, it's the state not wanting to give up power over those things. And I don't think the state will give up power on this. And I don't think that necessarily that a digital ID needs to be decentralized. I don't necessarily see the purpose of it as opposed to a digital form that can interact with chains and applications. So I'm not such a big fan of DID in that case. And I think the lack of its adoption within the blockchain space, even forget the regular space, is proof of that. Then it comes to like AI. Blockchains and AI and metaverses don't really mix. Again, like you can track the ownership change of, did I buy this skin for the gun in Call of Duty or that in that block, whatever toy in Roblox or whatever it is. But the metaverse lives off chain. The tracking of the items inside might happen on chain. When it comes to AI, it's funny. I find it really interesting that no one's actually done this. I think the only way that there's, except for like, perhaps payments and there's some other applications, but I think one of the most fundamentally untapped bridges between AI and blockchain, because there's not a lot, is that that is decentralized compute when it comes to the GPUs. So if you think about Bitcoin, for example, all the Bitcoin miners are solving every 10 minutes a new block and an algorithm that gets progressively harder or lower depending on how many miners are on the network. But what if that hash power was actually put to doing compute instead of a useless, algorithm that every 10 minutes needs to be recomputed, spending God knows how much millions of dollars on energy? What if that energy was spent for compute for AI? And then, it's a whole story. You can build a whole system around it. But like the people who pay for the LLM are the ones who are paying the validators for actually doing the compute. And it's decentralized instead of in data centers. It's in distributed data centers.
Okay. Yeah, let me digest it. Well, one second. Okay, I have to admit, I was expecting at least a little disagreement here, but okay, it sounds like we're heading toward a surprising consensus, and I think it's a pretty important reminder that blockchains are distributed ledgers for everyone who is viewing right now, watching, listening, right? Not the giant hard drivers for every piece of digital content we create. And if someone tried to store every AI conversation or every metaverse interaction on chain, the network would probably wave a white flag pretty quickly. But what blockchains do incredibly well is tracking ownership, permissions, changes in a way that everyone can verify, right? The interesting part, Alex, is decentralized compute. Okay, my mind is headed up right now regarding this. Because this feels like an area people don't talk about enough when discussing AI and blockchain, and maybe what that is where the real opportunities, rather than forcing AI and blockchains to do jobs they were never designed for.
Well,
And
they're not really forcing them. They're just trying to sell a token when they kind of use the narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like this is yes, but I think that we're trying to be past that era. But Alex, you highlighted decentralized compute as one of the biggest untapped opportunities between blockchain and AI. One side question that I personally have: what does that actually can look like in practice? Like, are we talking about future where AI models can be trained and run across decentralized infrastructure with the cryptographic proof of the results, or like what needs to happen before that becomes commercially viable?
Um, well, for starters, no one. I don't think anyone's actually building something like this, if I'm not mistaken, of some sort of distributed, decentralized compute for an LLM, and then whoever. I mean, LLM because that's like the easiest, commercial model. But then, oh, I mean, again, I haven't architected the system. Maybe I should. But imagine it this way: Bitcoin is already distributed and decentralized compute. It's just that it's computing nothing, right? It's not that compute for Bitcoin is just a competition of everybody doing the same algorithm in order to compete with one another to get the right to mint a block. But then all of that hash power is wasted. It's not producing anything valuable beyond the right to mint Bitcoin and the social consensus over why Bitcoin is valuable. And I'm not dismaying Bitcoin for it, but it's just that there's no arguing about it. The compute is not used for something productive in and of itself. And so if you had a way of, let's say, maybe perhaps sharding compute, and then having the miners or the solvers, or however, that's more for intents, but you come up with some name for what they're doing, right? The distributed data centers, they provide hash power, they provide GPU power for the right to mint blocks on that chain, right? Sorry. Yes, they would provide hash GPU compute for the right to earn yield from the commercial model of selling the LLM to the public.
Interesting. I mean, I think this is an interesting rabbit hole that we're going down here. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
we kind of took a wild tangent on it, but it's
we did. I mean, the challenge is that I agree with you. Bitcoin is a waste of energy. That's the main issue, right? And so, thankfully, most blockchains are now on proof of stake as opposed to proof of work. But Bitcoin ain't going anywhere anytime soon, right? So that compute power is going to be wasted for as long as Bitcoin's around, and we can't really change that. So that horse is bolted. I think fundamentally, blockchains are.
Well, it's more about like creating a different chain that puts to use distributed compute in that sense, right?
Sure. Well,
Bitcoin's
that's right.
its own gold mine.
Thing, right? So
yeah,
I mean, fundamentally, the way validators and blockchains, they do things differently to what an LLM needs, right? So I can't. I'm interested to see if there's some sort of theoretical path down this route, but for me, they're just two whole different problem sets. I mean, LLMs require massive GPUs, lots of NVIDIA chips, doing lots of things to manage their models. Whereas validators want to just validate a block and as fast as they can and get their rewards, right? So, I mean, the common theme here is that both are incredibly inefficient, right? Blockchains has massive redundancy. I mean, Polymesh has 90 something odd validators on a network. Every single one has a complete copy of the chain set. Maybe not the archival, but it's certainly a lot of the data, right? That's both its strength and its weakness, right? It does take up a lot of space, a lot of compute, and that's the world we live in, right? But how we can leverage that for AI, I'm not sure. Another podcast, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think that this is an interesting topic that all of us need to 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 research. But I can't speak even because my brain cannot process it right now. Sorry, but yeah, this is probably one of the thing everyone on the stage can agree. Both systems are inefficient, just in different ways. Blockchain networks spend a lot of resources reaching consensus, securing transactions, while large AI models consume enormous amounts of computing power and electricity during training and inference, maybe. Uh, I recently saw a research that International Energy Agency estimates that electricity demand from data centers, including AI workloads, is grown pretty rapidly. So efficiency is becoming a real business issue, not just a technical one. Maybe the goal should not be trying to combine these technologies into one giant system. Instead, we should focus on making each other better, each one better at what it does best. Blockchain can provide trust and verification, while AI can provide intelligence and automation. And sometimes the smartest architecture is not making every tool do everything, but letting different tools work together efficiently.
Yeah,
It's like with the team members inside the team. CTO cannot be a CMO. CMO cannot be a CTO. Otherwise, it will be very inefficient, right?
exactly.
Yeah, but let's try to go to another topic on our agenda. Mm, do I want to go to another topic? Yeah. Okay. Can decentralized identity and KYC tokens provide a permanent shield against deepfakes and AI identity theft in public digital environments? How do you think? It's also a very big topic, and I think there can be a lot of sub questions to that. But yeah, Martin, how do you think?
Look, this is our home turf, identity. I think AI definitely is a risk when it comes to identity because of deepfakes. I mean, we had that case a few years ago with the Arab office in Hong Kong. They lost something like $25 million because someone joined a video call where every other person on the call was a deepfake. I mean, that's phenomenal, every one of them. And so because the process trusted faces and voices, then they got away with it. If the process had required some sort of proof or signature or some other verified identity, then that tack just wouldn't have worked, right? So deepfakes are a definite issue. So I think that's an area that we need to focus on. This is where I think the cryptography really helps. So you trust the math and not the person necessarily. The identity, keys can be rotated, keys can be lost, but identity persists. So making sure you have that sort of identity process that's really strong to ensure you know who you're dealing with. You're not talking to a bot. The other thing too is that identity is also being attacked through fake KYC processes. And so to your point before, Alex, about the state owning like your identity, I think having those sort of centralized identity systems is a good thing. You want to be able to go somewhere and go, is this really who this person says they are? And so, we have AI attacking KYC processes at the moment through, fake documents, synthetic faces. Naive KYC is going to become an issue for people, I think. And having to be reusable, verify once properly with a specialist, and then reuse that attestation. So, fewer honeypots for personal data, fewer chances to generate identity that's wrong or fake that can slip through the cracks. So I think that's the area that's the real friction between AI and blockchain at the moment.
Okay. I think the story that you mentioned, Martin, is a little bit scary. Like the case where a person joins the call with deep fakes. Oh no! Imagine it happens to you, right? It shows this is no longer a future problem. It's happening today, and deepfakes have become so convincing that sometimes seeing someone's face or hearing their voice is simply not enough anymore. I also had some cases, but personally inside the family, where a person that is dead right now calling my mother and asking for just to work stuff, and everyone was so shocked because it was his voice. It was a video call. Imagine. Like deep fakers didn't know that he is already dead for several months. This is funny but also very scary.
It is. And just to reveal too that actually Alex and I are both actually Chat GPT bots at the moment. With neither of us.
I was going to say, you're not even sure if it's really me, Paulie, right?
You don't know if me is me. Maybe I'm. AI, I don't know. And I
That was
just
good. That was well played. That was well played.
yeah, it's just the connection problems. It's just the connection problems. Don't pay attention to that. But yeah, that feels like a much stronger like foundation in a world, in terms of cryptography, right? So we're jumping between my thoughts. Really like the point, Martin, regarding the cryptography, because it lets us trust the math instead of trusting
Mm,
what we see on a screen. And that feels like a much stronger foundation in a world where AI can copy almost anyone. And at the same time, it's pretty interesting that centralized identity can still play an important role, especially because AI is now actively attacking traditional KYC processes. And I think that AI powered fraud and identity attacks are expected to increase significantly over the next few years. So stronger verification is becoming essential. Maybe the future is not choosing between centralized or decentralized identity, but somehow combining both with cryptographic proof, so it becomes much harder for bad actors to fool people.
mm.
Alex, what do you think?
Uh, the deep fake thing, it's getting bad, right? It's getting actually really bad. The part again where it comes down to it is, damn it, Martin, we need to be on different panels. Um, because like I love going on it because everybody usually on a panel is just like everybody agrees with each other, especially if they're in person. And then I love to just like look at the rest of the panelists and be like, you're wrong, and this is why. Right? It's always really fun on a panel, and they just do it because no one wants to rock the boat. But like, I don't have what to rock the boat with you yet, so maybe we should do like a Maverick equities polymath polymesh like blockchain battle rather than panel
Bring it on,
discussion
baby.
because it's we're getting along like we agree too much. We get along too much.
All right.
Yeah, when it comes to like KYC tokens, I think what do they want to call them again? The tokens, like the tokens that go to your wallet and they're not movable. I'm blanking on the term at the moment.
I know what you mean. It's the rules follow the asset as opposed to being somewhere else.
No. There's a token like a KYC token that goes to your wallet
Uh,
and it's not movable.
the
I'm blanking on the term right now.
soulbound NFTs, that kind of stuff.
Soulbound, correct.
Yeah.
So the problem with that kind of thing is, and like KYC tokens for somebody, is that at the end of the day, again, it needs to be centralized. So
Mm,
it's, because like let's say for example, um, someone becomes a politically exposed person, right? That needs to then be adjusted on your KYC. What if somebody goes onto a watch list or any of the other things that, or they are it turns out that they're also North Korean or something, like all these things that KYC is there for, or they're, let's say found guilty of money laundering, so they wouldn't pass KYC, right? So, or there's a whole host of different things. So KYC needs to be adjustable. So this idea of just we verified this wallet and it's good, that's wonderful, that's great. But you also have to redo KYC every year or so. And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like why are we beating around, like do we really gain more value from building an insanely complex structure which still hasn't actually proven itself in any great way, as opposed to just doing it centralized?
mm.
Maybe you could share, maybe you have like a temporary token, maybe, but again, you can have a permission token that has your KYC status that can be revoked, that can be clawed back, kind of like an RWA token can be clawed back, right?
Mm.
So there's the idea of, again, KYC tokens, it, if you do it right, but again, it's not decentralized. It wouldn't be decentralized in that way. Yeah, so those are kind of really my thoughts on that. On digital identity and like deep fakes, you're going to get deep fakes. You hop onto a call with somebody, AI is going to get to the point where it can just, someone will be able to type into an LLM like what the response is, and it will fake the response and say it out loud.
Mm.
So there was actually a great Spanish show about that, where like all these people like were fooled to go into a nuclear bunker, and then because they were trying to like get a billionaire to like buy some startup for like $800 million, and so then the billionaire investor was actually in the bunker, and they thought that there was nuclear war in the bunker, but in the real world there was nothing, and so they used a deep fake in the real world on video to authorize like some $800 million acquisition of a startup. And they had these phone calls in real time and video calls, and he was like, "Oh, I'm in Thailand, and there's not good reception, and it'll go all fuzzy, and the internet breakup that would happen." I mean, there was all it was a remarkable show, but I don't know if blockchain is really the answer to it. I haven't really given it much thought, prior to our podcast for deepfakes specifically. But I mean, I do think that, again, when it comes to tracking it's going to go back to this. When it comes to tracking provenance of ownership for anything, for example, so let's say you have I'm a big F1 fan. Let's say you have a Max Verstappen race-worn helmet, for example, and it's a memorabilia. So Red Bull can have an official Red Bull account, or wallet, effectively, and issue that NFT that is the certificate of authenticity for that helmet. And every single time that helmet is sold from one store to a collector, from a collector to another collector, a collector back to a store, you can transfer that NFT with it, and you could trace that provenance back from, investor 4 bought it from investor 3, from investor 2 who bought it from the official Red Bull website. And you could see that it was issued from Red Bull as well. So in terms of tracking fakes, I think blockchain is remarkable for that. For deep fakes, I'll ask the Polymath CTO. Well, we got your response, but yeah.
Exactly. No, it's all good.
Okay. Maybe that's another question, which we need to revert back, and sometime later, in several months, maybe there will be an interesting case study for us to take a look at. Like, imagine some really big scam, not in just crypto industry, but political, or something else. Oh
Like the
yeah.
current state of democracy.
Maybe. Oh no. Oh no. I already tweeted today and deleted it after some some time, because I understood that it was not politically correct. So yeah, let's not go there, please. Otherwise,
Oh,
I will not.
now I'm actually really curious. What'd you say?
Well, no. I'll text you later, Martin too, but not on the recording.
Understand.
Oh man, this is where my geopolitical jokes want to come out and be like, if the German deleted their geopolitical opinion on Twitter, I'm like, now I really need to know what it is.
I'll tell you later, but for now, live with it. But yeah, I think that our conversation is actually becomes pretty practical, because in terms of deep fakes, they are improving with incredible speed, and we are reaching a point where seeing a face on a video call is no longer enough to prove who someone really is. KYC tokens that stay permanently linked to your wallet, like soulbound NFTs, could make identity much harder to fake, because they cannot simply be transferred to someone else. But of course, there is a trade-off, right? Since issuing those credentials usually requires a trusted centralized authority in the first place. That may not sound very Web3, but sometimes a little centralization at the beginning creates much more trust later on. And blockchain is also very good at tracking ownership and creating a clear history, which makes it much easier to detect fake assets or suspicious transfers. So maybe the answer is like to balance somehow centralization and decentralization. But yeah.
Unfortunately, it's an arms race. I mean, the great thing about Web3 in early days was that because you could rely on the blockchain to give you that source of truth, then in a trustless environment, anonymous parties could transact and they were happy, right? The challenge is that because of the, let's say, less than scrupulous habits of some people, then the governments are starting to become more involved, and regulation is now becoming more adopted. The whole point of regulation is to slow you down, so that way you can't do some of the more nefarious things that people sometimes did, right? And so, I think you like that one. Thanks, Alex.
No, finally I have something to disagree with you on.
Oh, okay, great. Here we go. I look forward to that. So the thing is that the regulation side of things, the whole promise of blockchain was to make this whole process smoother, more automated, more sort of seamless, and that kind of stuff, right? The challenge is that with AI coming on top and making it easier to fake some of these processes, then the risk is we end up creating more regulation or more sort of challenges around that sort of process, right? So it's going to be an interesting game to play. Like, I think the good thing is that we know the cryptography is sound. So ultimately, whatever you can prove on chain is the truth. But having to make sure that that's connected to the right real world central party, central organization, whatever it is, that's the challenge. Alex, I now let you disagree with me.
Well, it's a partial disagreement. So the regulation, I think, was intended to bring rules, not necessarily to slow you down, but it was brought in to give rules and regulations and to create, a fair playing ground that everybody plays by.
Sure.
And to regulate. So, for example, like the Howey test and how everything started with selling the rights and the profits to the oranges, yada yada. The rules around securities was originally intended to create investor protections.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for far too long, regulations have now almost in a way gate kept people from opportunity, gate kept technology from advancing. My team is like, Alex, don't disagree. Like, don't rock the boat too much. But it's regulations have, to me, honestly, the regulatory regime around investment specifically have been bastardized. Honestly, I think they're now there to restrict the middle class from accessing investments, and that's where RWAs come into the loop, where they can actually, I honestly think we need a 21st century securities laws. I think we need to get rid of accredited investor rules. I believe we need a constitutional amendment for the right to economics, capital markets, and investments, but like to be enshrined in a constitutional right, as opposed to you're not rich enough, you're not smart enough, so you're not allowed to invest, because that's what regulations are doing today, as opposed to here's a set of rules that like you need to issue a prospectus, you need to have these things in a prospectus, it needs to be reviewed by some sort of easily accessible and quickly reviewing process, maybe even just a notary of some kind, but then will allow people to make decisions on their own behalf. Go after the people who commit fraud rather than restricting the law-abiding citizens looking for investments. So right now, the regulations have effectively forced investors into, I say investors, everybody, anybody with some disposable capital who wants to have a better life tomorrow, which is everyone in the world. And so what it's done is force them into public markets, which are highly manipulated today. And with money printing, everything's inflated. I mean, the first time you were allowed to buy SpaceX stock was at a $1.25 trillion valuation. The value growth is gone. All the hyped IPOs have gone down. The first time you were allowed to buy Coinbase was at a $100 billion valuation, and it went down 70%, recovered a bit right now. So there's that, right? So it's like it's forced you into manipulated capital markets. And then it's also forced you into real estate, where regulations are not allowing developers to build, which is restricting supply. And then again, with money printing, skyrocketing the price. So people can't get into real estate, and you can't really make money so much as a regular person in the stock market. So for me, these regulations are now gatekeeping rather than protecting. They're doing the polar opposite of what their quote unquote intent is.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, the slowing down bit was to try and prevent people being ripped off. It is aimed at protecting the smaller players rather than going after the fraudsters. So I do agree with that. Sorry.
No. Every time when there is a slight raise of the question in terms of regulations, everyone is like, yeah, we're really looking forward, like we're progressing, but and there's like very very huge but that is like I love that people are like angry in terms of some things because they're like illogical sometimes. I'm not sure what should happen.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of regulation in the sense of like I wish it wasn't there, but it's necessary. you kind of have to embrace the cactus. I mean, I think it would be nice if we lived in a world where everyone could have their own keys and wallets and transact in a pure Web3 way. But that's not the world we live in. And the challenge is that people do lose their keys. My dad couldn't use a blockchain to save his life. This is inaccessible technology to many people, right? So we have to figure out a way forward. I'm hoping a lot of my decentralized maximalist friends would be abhorrent about this whole idea about regulation, and I share their concern in the sense of like it's definitely we go down a more centralized route, but some sort of hybrid where we can do both would be ideal. We do need the protections of governments. Governments are there, controversially, primarily, or should be there to protect their citizens and do the best things by their nation states. But I share people's concern that this could be bad actors could get into governments, and then you have all kinds of challenges there too. So a strong democracy is a good thing, and that's the key to success, I think, in this regard.
I want to add something to what you said there, Martin. You said that your father can't use a blockchain. You don't really use a blockchain.
No,
you use applications on top of the blockchain, and that I think is as an industry, I think we fundamentally industry-wide misunderstand blockchains as we call gas revenue, or gas fees are not really revenue because they don't go to the main company that is the driving force behind the blockchain. The chain might be decentralized, but leadership isn't. And so there needs to be revenue models for the chain, for the development companies behind the chains. There needs to be, like, if you think about it, again, as a blockchain is a decentralized application layer to launch applications on top of, we almost should set gas fees to like $1, for example. I mean, maybe that's not the number, so don't quote me on that. But if you're using Dropbox, there's a fee for using their cloud storage. If you're using Google, there's a fee to use Gmail. There are fees for certain, you pay fees in order to run the networks, and they're funding these things from inflation, right? The validators are earning inflation off of by processing blocks rather than earning revenue from the blocks, right? Even Bitcoin's not cash flow positive in terms of transaction fees paying miners. Bitcoin for our entire lifetime is inflationary. So what we need to do is get to a point where whether for example, Near is doing intents, and that's actually a quite an interesting thing. Maverick, we have Equities, which is our RWA tech stack on top that runs as a business. I guess Polymath is the company and our tokenization engine on Polymesh, et cetera. But like these general purpose chains, the Ethereum Foundation, Solana, it's just interesting. Like they don't have revenue models. So the idea is just raise a ton of cash, hopefully inflate the token price, live off of treasuries or other investments. And that's how you actually fund your ecosystem. You turn into a fund manager rather than an ecosystem builder. So it's sorry, I have a big tangent on what you said on like your father can't use a blockchain, but there's a lot of people that, we need to make applications easy to use as Spotify, as iTunes, right?
Preach it, brother. I completely agree. In fact, that's so what we did at Polymath is the people coming to our company, they don't care it's a blockchain. We're a capital raise platform sitting on top of Polymesh. And so people come onto the platform. It's a Web 2.0 experience. We have integrated KYC, AML, all that kind of stuff. So it's just we don't even charge them gas. We fund the gas ourselves through the SaaS fees we charge our clients. And so the two questions that clients have for us, it's not what blockchain you're using, it's how do I raise money? How do I get liquidity? That's it, right? They couldn't give a bleep about anything else, right? And so that's where we're going with our platform.
Yeah, maybe I'll add again to that. 100% right. It's when it comes to when you're a business servicing people who want to tokenize real estate or commodities, et cetera, I'll leave it at there so Paulie can get to the questions. But basically, they care about, can they raise capital? Will there be liquidity? Will there be lending? Will there be users? Will there be people buying the deal flow that we're selling? Right? It's not everybody in the crypto world and crypto Twitter likes to think, oh, this is EVM and that's not EVM and this is Solidity and what is this ZK thing gonna do? And like we're all in an echo chamber blabbing at each other things that the rest of the world couldn't give a shit about, but we can't build a product that the rest of the world wants to use. Not we, but like, the industry.
I'm going to make a prediction here. I think that the current crypto model, the model that's been around since 2018, where people will build ecosystems, get gas up and get token value up and do staking, that ecosystem is dying. I think ultimately it'll come down to revenue, getting revenue through traditional means, through fiat onto platforms that utilize blockchains and then actually leverage that technology to do what they need to do and provide value to their customers, right? And so
you're starting to piss me off, Martin, with all because I agree again. If you look at to give a little bit of insight into what you're saying, if you look at most chains, right, even the big ones, there's only a couple different platforms that are actually doing well on each of those chains or that are driving that chain itself.
Exactly.
3 to 5, maybe the big one's 10, but really, honestly, 2 to 3 that are doing well on that chain. There's this idea of a vast ecosystem of thousands of dApps that interact together hasn't panned out.
No, it hasn't happened. Another controversial statement, there's a belief that TradFi and DeFi will actually come together over time. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's happening is TradFi will cherry pick the best of DeFi and use it, and that becomes the new finance.
Yeah, to me, that's honestly the same thing. That's the same merge, right? If you have a convergence of two galaxies that hit each other, one will be a little bit more dominant and overtake the other. TradFi could overtake DeFi. DeFi will eventually will need to become in a way, certain elements of it will become permissioned. I was talking to somebody the other day in a meeting, and they were like, "Oh, do you think that we'll get fully permissionless, decentralized RWAs trading?" And I was like, could you imagine any regulator that would allow that, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, the Lazarus Group in North Korea now own $100 million of US Treasury bonds. And now the US is paying North Korea.
Yeah, not happening soon.
Yeah,
it's tough. No, I really like how the discussion is going between two of you, and I think is actually the perfect place to slowly wrap up, because it brings us back to the people using this technology. Most users do not wake up in the morning thinking, I hope I get to use a blockchain today in some way. They want an application that is fast, simple, and solves a real problem. Nobody asks whether Spotify is using the perfect database or Instagram or Twitter itself. Nobody they just expect it to work, and it sounds like the same future is coming for Web3, where users interact with applications while the blockchain quietly does its job in the background, whether it's tokenization Polymesh, equities in Maverick, or intent-based experimentations with Near. The real competition, I think, is no longer between blockchains. It's about who delivers the most value and the best user experience. And in the end, the ecosystem do not survive because they have the loudest community. They survive because they create products that people actually want to use or even unconsciously want to use. And I have just a closing quick follow-up question before we're going to wrap up the panel here. How do you think, what is one thing you believe this industry absolutely has to get right before we can truly reach mainstream adoption?
Wow. I'll go first. I think the main thing is people got to realize this is more of an e-commerce play than a crypto play. I mean, blockchain is a back-end technology. Until blockchains came along, we had databases. No one came to a website and said, are you using Oracle or IBM DB2 or some other esoteric database? They didn't care, right? It's about adding value, about providing a service, generating revenue. It's about that. I mean, Polymath themselves spent years trying to get institutions to use blockchains and our technology. They all got stuck not on the token or on the blockchain bit. They got stuck on the stuff around it, the regulation, the user experience, the value. What problem are you solving? Figure out the problem you're solving, Go and solve that, and then you'll make money. And that's really it.
Alex?
I'm gonna have to find something. Maybe we need beers and geopolitical conversation, Barn. I'm not sure. We'll find something to disagree on. But for mainstream adoption, honestly, I think when it comes down to it, and to circle back to like niche chains versus general purpose chains, I think that we're going to see a lot more niche chains for companies to have their own networks. They might not have as many validators. They might be centralized sequencers for layer twos, but then you're going to get interoperability. So the average user would just hop easily from platform to platform, not knowing that they're hopping between chains. But these chains are their own little mini ecosystems, kind of like what Hyperliquid is in its own way, or what, Equities is for Maverick and Polymath is for Polymesh, etc. And you won't really know, like, the way that Spotify is built, that's different than Twitter is built. That's different than when my wife goes to order groceries on Carrefour. They all probably have different tech stacks in the back end that absolutely nobody gives a damn when my wife is looking for, do they have the milk she likes, right? So it's for mainstream adoption, I think we need to get to a place where we build applications and products that service needs in people's lives. That might be RWAs, it might be banking, it might be secondary markets, it might be, if you look at, prediction markets, human beings have an inherent need for gambling for some reason. Ask a psychologist why, I'm not sure, but prediction markets are leveraging that. You don't need prediction markets to use chains at all, quite frankly. And as we've seen, they're not so decentralized either. So if they're not decentralized, then just run it centrally. So what we need to do as an industry is stop the grifting, stop the gambling so much. Investments is different than, like what meme coin as Brian Johnson influenced today by changing his Twitter profile picture, and build applications that make a difference in people's lives. Spotify isn't a remarkable application. Maybe I should get paid for Spotify ads, but Spotify isn't, it's just coming to my mind as the app, but like Spotify isn't a remarkable application, or YouTube not a remarkable application, or Claude a remarkable application, because of the back-end tech stack that it uses or provides. But they provide, Anthropic and Claude provide an easy to use and very smart AI tool, an LLM for regular people to use, or, ChatGPT. Spotify provides music in a streaming way that is replacing radio. So these different applications are addressing a consumer market need. So for mainstream adoption, what you really need to do is address a wide market, consumer market need. There are things that we can do to make it easier. We're using Dynamics, and there's a mouthful, embedded non-custodial MPC wallet, powered by Dynamic, powered by Fireblocks because they bought them, in order to give users a look and feel of just an account, but it's a non-custodial wallet that they can export their private keys for safety. We're building a gas abstraction tool so that they can go in and just deposit USDT and buy an asset using USDT instead of that, and it'll buy the MVRK token in the back end and fuel their wallet so that they don't have to worry about gas. So there are things that we can do to make them easier. So Martin's father can use equities, but the real thing is to create a product people will pay to use.
Exactly. Yeah. Completely agree. There's one small point I do disagree on. I don't think there will be growing niche chains. I think over the next few years there will be a consolidation of networks because they're expensive to run chains. And I think the networks actually do have the fundamentals right in terms of what they can provide in terms of that functionality to dApps on top. Those are the ones that will survive, Yeah.
It could be L2s, for example. So you just have a centralized sequencer for Robin has their own one. Coinbase already has their own one. Kraken has their own one, right? Like it could be in that fashion. It might not be fully decentralized general purpose L1s in that way.
Okay. Look, we'll see what happens. It'll be a fascinating time. I think there will be consolidation. Too many bridges, too many interoperability issues. So anyway, look, I think we'll close it there. We could keep going for ages otherwise.
The
I,
bridges one is fun. I love it. It's like we're the most. I love the Layer-0 guys. They're great guys, but like when they start quoting you tens of millions of dollars for integrations, and then it's like one for one signers, and you're like, the enemy was inside the house the whole time. Like the call was coming from inside the house, not
Yeah.
from the infra layer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would love us to go for another hour of different discussions, but to be able to save some interesting thoughts for next episodes, I think that now it's timing that brings us to the end of this panel, and I think that we've covered much more than technology. Today, we talked about identity, regulation, AI, tokenization, and most importantly, building products that solve real problems for real
Ex-
people. One message that stood out to me today is that blockchain should not be the product, it should be the infrastructure that quietly makes, like, really, really quietly makes the great applications possible. And we also heard that trust and user experience and real value will matter more than hype in this industry continues to grow. And I would love to extend a huge thank you to our fantastic speakers, Martin, to you, Alex, to you as well, for sharing your insights, your experience, for giving us an honest discussion about where this industry is heading. And thank you, everyone who joined us today, watching online, listening online. Dear speakers, if you have some final thoughts to our listeners or to each other or to me, feel free to speak up.
Polly, thank you for having us. Martin, it's a pleasure to meet you. Well, there is something we didn't hear today, though. Your political opinion that you deleted from Twitter.
Fantastic.
All right, fine. DMs. I get it. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paulie. Thank you, Alex, for a great chat. Really enjoyed it and looking forward to seeing how this future goes.
Talk soon,
Awesome.
guys.
Talk soon. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's been Polly Speaks, everyone who is watching or listening us. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we will see you on the next panel next week. Thank you. Bye bye.